My last guest on this segment is Gene Sperling. He's a senior advisor to the president. He's a coordinator of the American Rescue Plan and a former director of the National Economic Council. Everybody serious in economics knows Gene Sperling. Gene, it's great to be with you today. We've had a phenomenal line of conversations, and I guess when I've been thinking about them and knew we were going to get a chance to spend some time together, I was asking myself, if we were doing this 1 year ago, right? 1 year ago, before President Biden had come in, we had COVID hitting the economy, and we had not had the American Rescue Plan in place. We had not done this. You know, I just wonder what your mood would have been, what my mood would have been. Now with the American Rescue Plan, which you've helped usher forward and deploy resources, where is this country, say, compared to a year ago?
Well, I think it's just a dramatic difference. And I think what's really important to understand about the American Rescue Plan was that it was designed to be both a bold boost to jumpstart the economy, but it was also, Steve, about lessons learned too, about making sure that the funds would be there for long enough to not make the mistake of the American Recovery Plan under President Obama, where it helped us get out of recession fast, but wasn't strong or long enough to make sure the recovery was as strong as needed and that it could overcome the bumps in the road. Now, when you look at the jumpstart, I mean, think about it. We were creating 60,000 jobs a month. It's been 600,000 a month since the American Rescue Plan. We were losing 175,000 hospitality jobs a month when President Biden came in. Now you've created 2.2 million. We're at 4.8% unemployment 18 months faster. That is because there was so much in there that was about helping to jumpstart the economy, combined with the effort to spread vaccines and help deal with COVID. But I also think it's important to note that when you look at this 1.9 trillion, when you look at things like the state and local plan, you know, they for every city, they come in two tranches. They can be used over 4 years. And what that means is, I think, again, on lessons learned, you got to have enough funds and flexibility there to help mayors and governors deal with the bumps in the road. 23 of the 26 first months of recovery after the Great Recession, you actually saw state and local governments contracting from the U.S. economy, taking about a half a point of growth a year. Now people have the funds and the flexibility where if they needed the money for crisis, it was there. But if they want to have it there, you know, seeing that things like higher gas prices or the Delta variant can happen, and surely things will happen in 2022. These funds are strong enough and long enough that it can help us have not just the quick jumpstart, but ensuring that this is a durable and equitable recovery.
Gene, I want our audience to understand something because, you know, I want to call these distractions because they're big priorities of your White House, you know, the infrastructure bill, the reconciliation bill. But, you know, the pandemic's not over and the American Rescue Plan is still operating. I mean, there's still elements out there, but we almost, I mean, I got to just blame us in the media. We don't talk about it that way. And just so I'm interested in our audience getting kind of a clearer picture from your perspective of what are the vital ongoing dimensions of the American Rescue Plan that are here and present now?
Sure. Well, obviously, I mentioned the state and local plan. That's $350 billion, you know, compared to the $140 billion in the recovery plan. That is out. You know, what's interesting there is that, you know, I was just talking to the governor of Hawaii yesterday. He is one of the many governors and mayors who said before a dime of the American Recovery Plan had gone out, they suspended layoffs they'd been planning. Just simply knowing the funds were coming their way has allowed many of the states to accelerate even other spending, knowing that's going to be there. So that money comes out for most states and all cities in two tranches. So all of the efforts that you might see that people are doing to universal broadband, to housing, to dealing with some of their financial struggles, to dealing with some of the hardships created by COVID, both health and economic wise, those are still being funded at state, local levels. And much of the rescue efforts you hear at state and city levels are happening because of the American Rescue Plan. Second, we're seeing, well, one of the great challenges has been standing up the emergency rental assistance. Our country has never before this year had a national policy to try to have a more humane eviction policy to prevent unnecessary evictions. That's been one of our most challenging because we were asked, or the state and local governments were asked to stand up something new. And we have always said this is not going fast enough or well enough to satisfy us. But over 500,000 family households, rental households, received payments that paid off all of their back arrears and have helped prevent so far the type of surge in eviction policy. But that funding will go on for 3 or 4 years and gives us an ability to try to have long-term reform in eviction policy. And then, of course, I have to mention the child tax credit. The child tax credit that people are receiving right now is historic. And I will also say that it has been really an example of what Joe Biden has wanted from us, which is to implement well in a way that's clear and simple and perceivable by working families. So think about it. This was the first monthly tax credit. It was passed in March. In 4 months, over 60 million children are getting it automatically. 4 months, it is monthly for the first time. In 4 months, it is being on the same day, the 15th of every month. 90% of people get it in direct deposit. 27 million low-income kids get the full benefit for the first time. So that people, just got their third, people are still going to get another payment in November 15th and December 15th, and then they'll get that second half when they file for their taxes. So that is something historic, something that the president is fighting for and fighting to continue in the Building Back Better plan. So yes, I do think that, everybody, in particular the media, often are victim to, of course, wanting to follow, the latest negotiation. But there is so much that is life-changing, from child care to the state local relief to the child tax credit to rental assistance that is happening in the American Recovery Plan. And yes, it may not be as exciting once it's passed, but this is a president who believes the work is not done until those dollars are reaching people in a way that is helping their life, helping provide them true economic dignity and security. And that's really, what I wake up every day and try to do.
Well, Gene, I know you can't do what I'm about to ask you to do, which is to take off your White House hat, put on your economist hat, because it's always fun, and I would learn so much from you. When you got 4.8% unemployment, and you've done as much in the economy to kind of get through this point, but actually kind of rewire the social contract on some of these things so that the system can keep breathing. And as we discuss these other big bills, I was with Senator Manchin for dinner on Monday night, and he kind of shocked the room, and he said, guess what? How much we spent on World War II and how much on the Marshall Plan? Put them both together under current dollars. The couple of bills circulating are more than what we paid for World War II and whatever. Now, I don't know if that's an unfair comparison, but it does raise this question. If you're at 4.8% employment with folks worried about inflation, is there a point that, from an economic perspective, we've done too well? We're winning too much in terms of the support and bringing people on. What's the blind spot in my thinking on that?
I think it goes back to what I said initially, which is that if you look at the American Rescue Plan, it was bold enough to help jumpstart us, to get the economy back to life, of course, together with the efforts to reduce COVID. But as I said, it is not right to think about that this was just $1.9 trillion, dumped out on the economy, whether it needed or not. There were things that got out quickly, as they should, like the economic impact payments and the restaurant programs, things to save small business. These things did give a boost to the economy. But we also see the economy and recoveries have bumps that happen along the way. And so, I think the more correct historical analogy is the American Rescue, is the effort after the Great Recession, where we saw that you need to ensure that demand stays strong that you have, in a sense, an insurance policy. Steve, you remember in 2011 when I became National Economic Advisor, everybody thought 2011 was going to be an easy year. Well, what happened? You had gas prices go up with the Arab Spring. Then you had a global supply shock when you had the meltdown in Japan, and then we had the debt crisis, and it ended up being a year of under 2% growth. So I think when you look at this, it is much more spread out, much more designed to be both a boost to a strong economy, but also to ensure those funds are there as an insurance policy and will be helpful for a durable and equitable recovery. And when it comes to the Build Back Better programs, I mean, there I think if you look at everything in there, one, these are often long-term agendas. And I'd say a couple things. One, they are about, one of the things I love about President Biden is like me, he or me like him, think that, giving people economic dignity, ensuring that they have a degree of security and opportunity in their lives in all situations is the right thing to do. But it also is part of increasing the productive capacity of our country to allow more parents to choose to work or not have to choose between caregiving or work, but to be able to do both, to have the infrastructure investments, the climate investments that allow us to grow, to be more productive. So what I see is a plan that jump-started the economy with the American Rescue Plan, but also ensured that over these next 2 or 3 years, there's the flexibility to deal with unexpected challenges and have a strong recovery. And then long-term investments that are actually going to be about increasing our capacity, increasing our productive capacity from the capacity of people to work when they have family obligations, to having more skills to meet new jobs and to increase their level of productivity. And then the infrastructure investments that, as we see right now, will help us avoid supply shocks and allow us to have greater growth without having inflationary pressures. So I whether I have this hat on or I was talking off the record and not in this job, I would believe very strongly that this combination of the American Rescue Plan and the Build Back Better strategy is the exact right strategy for jumpstarting the economy, having a strong, durable recovery in the first 2 or 3 years like we struggled to have after the Great Recession, and then making those long-term investments, which are about productivity and growth, but are also about meeting what I think, and I know the president thinks is the fundamental goal of economic policy, which is to ensure that people who work can care for their families with dignity, that they can pursue their potential, and that they can work with respect and dignity in the jobs that they do take on for that potential and to care for their families.
Gene, I got to sneak in one more question. I'm just sort of, continually haunted, the fact that we've just come through this period of COVID. We had the George Floyd murder and other murders, racial-driven murders in this country. And I know you see a lot of data, and I'm just interested because the president does care about this. You do care about the divides in this country. Whether or not we are at a point as a recovery comes back that the racial divide in opportunity is beginning to shift to a narrowing rather than to a widening. I mean, I think it's one of the questions about equity that I know your administration is struggling with. I guess my unfair question to you is, do you see any progress?
Well, you were just talking to Liz Shuler. Look, people, you hear people talking about downsides of too tight of a labor market. Well, what she was talking about was the increased worker, power, worker leverage. Tighter labor markets have tended to be very important. This was something Jared Bernstein, before he joined the administration, wrote constantly. The tighter labor markets were very important for raising the wages, not only of workers overall, but African American, Hispanic workers. So I do think this kind of stronger workforce. There's times in a crisis that you also have to make sure things don't get worse. Part of our problems has been that when you've had deep recessions, that it is often people of color, or as we've had a pandemic, who have suffered more. So going all out for a recovery, going all out to, address COVID, going all out to get more people health care as is proposed in the Build Back Better plan. All of these things are good for the country as a whole, but all of them have, I think, a particularly positive impact in ensuring that workers who've been too often not cut in, not getting the fair deal they should, which are often minority workers, are those who just have not had the opportunities that many of us have been blessed to, do have more chances to work, more chances to rise, and also are less prone to see their lives disrupted by these falls that for people who don't have the cushion. Look, if you're an upper middle class or middle class person, you go through a hard time, you often have somebody in your family you can lean on. You're going to go through some difficult times, but you may not face that downward cycle. For people who say, well, maybe President Biden did too much to try to call a halt to this, hurting economy, too much to get the job market going, they're certainly not thinking about the people who never had a cushion, who in too many recessions are the ones who don't just suffer for a few months, but get into downward cycles. Just give you one statistic that doesn't get a lot of attention. The last 3 months have seen the greatest drop in long-term employment that we've ever seen in a 3-month period since we started keeping records in 1948. Why do I say that? Because short-term unemployment hurts, but people get over it. Long-term unemployment, you lose your house, you lose your health, you can lose your spouse, you can never recover. Having a recovery that gets more people back on their feet faster is very important to the equity goals that you're mentioning.
Gene Sperling, I just always love having conversations with you, and I think today when we're thinking big thoughts and having lots of different voices on what it takes to look forward on a more perfect union, you always have really enlightening things to add to that conversation. Gene Sperling is a senior advisor to President Biden. He's the coordinator for the American Rescue Plan. Really appreciate your time, Gene. Thanks so much for joining us.
Steve, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And that brings us to the end of today's Focus segment. A big thank you to our sponsors, Microsoft and Southern Company, and to all of you watching at home. We're going to be back at 4 p.m. for Reveal, our third segment today, where we're going to be joined by Sal Khan, founder of the Khan Academy, the new National Youth Poet Laureate, and the mayor of Atlanta. See you shortly.